The hum of Reagan National Airport buzzed like a restless hive that morning. Travelers hurried past Gate 23, voices blending with the echo of rolling suitcases and boarding calls. Among them stood 13-year-old Zuri James, clutching her backpack and passport, excited to visit her aunt in Los Angeles. She had flown alone before, always confident, always prepared. What she didn't know was that this trip would test everything her parents had ever taught her about courage, dignity, and justice. Behind the counter stood Emily Thompson, the senior gate agent. Her smile was polite but thin, the kind that vanished the moment she turned toward someone who didn't fit her idea of normal. Zuri noticed how Emily greeted some passengers warmly, but stiffened when people of color approached. When a Latino family handed over their boarding passes, Emily's tone turned sharp, her questions invasive. Zuri's stomach tightened. She had read about discrimination, but watching it happen up close felt different, colder, crueler. When it was finally her turn, Zuri stepped forward, calm and polite. "Good afternoon. I'm checking in for Flight 447, she said, handing over her passport and phone. Emily's eyes flicked to the document and narrowed. "This doesn't look right," she muttered. Zuri blinked, confused. "Is something wrong with my passport?" The agent didn't answer, only asked how a 13-year-old could afford to fly alone. The implication stung. Zuri explained that her parents had bought the ticket, but Emily's suspicion deepened. She examined the passport under the light, flipping pages with exaggerated care. "Where were you born?" she demanded. "In Washington, D.C., Zuri replied evenly. "It says so right there." Emily's expression hardened. "Don't get smart with me." Other passengers began to notice. A man frowned, whispering to his wife. Zuri's heart thudded, but she remembered her father's voice, "Stay calm. Facts are your armor." So she asked, gently but firmly, why she was being questioned when others were not. That single question changed everything. Emily's face flushed with anger. "Are you accusing me of racism?" she snapped. Zuri didn't flinch. "I'm asking why I'm being treated differently." Emily's tone rose, her words sharp as glass. She declared that the passport looked fake and that she would confiscate it. Zuri knew enough to answer, steady as stone. "You don't have legal authority to seize federal documents. Only customs or federal officers can do that." The gate agent froze, stunned that a child would know the law. That shock turned to fury. "Well, let's see what your rights are worth," Emily hissed. She lifted the passport and, with a cruel smirk, dropped it straight into the trash bin behind her desk. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Zuri stared at the bin. Her future, her identity, her right to travel, buried under coffee cups and crumpled napkins. But instead of crying, she took a slow breath. Her father's mantra echoed again. Anger clouds judgment, but calm reveals truth. She reached into her backpack and pulled out her phone. "Record," she whispered to herself. Facing the camera, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands, she said, "My name is Zuri Marie James. It's 11:12 a.m., Gate 23, Reagan National Airport. The senior gate agent has just thrown my valid U.S. passport into the trash after I questioned why I was being treated differently from other passengers." Emily barked, "Turn that off right now." But Zuri continued, unshaken. "Under Glick versus Cunniff, I have a First Amendment right to record public officials performing their duties in a public space." The gate fell silent. Phones rose in the crowd. Passengers began filming from every angle. The balance of power had shifted. A teenage girl, armed only with knowledge and composure, had turned an act of humiliation into the first spark of justice. And this was only the beginning. The crowd around Gate 23 buzzed with disbelief. A moment ago, a gate agent had tossed a child's passport into the trash. Now, the same child stood filming calmly, voice steady and precise. Zuri's composure unsettled Emily Thompson more than anger ever could. Passengers whispered, cameras flashed, and the balance of power had quietly shifted. Zuri kept recording. "This act," she said clearly, "violates Title VI of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which forbids racial discrimination in any program receiving federal assistance. This airport receives federal funds." Her words hit like a gavel. Emily's fake confidence cracked. Her cheeks flushed. "You, stop talking," she snapped, stepping toward Zuri. Zuri didn't move. "Please don't touch me," she said, voice calm but firm. Any physical contact will be recorded and reported as assault. The crowd murmured approval. A businessman began filming too. The tension in the air thickened, justice and fear wrestling in real time. A second gate agent, James Park, hurried over, eyes darting between the furious Emily and the composed teenager. "What's going on?" he asked. Emily immediately twisted the story. "She's causing a disturbance, using a fake passport." But Zuri met his gaze squarely. "My passport is valid." She threw it away when I asked why I was being treated differently. James hesitated, then quietly lifted the trash lid and pulled out the passport. It was pristine, legitimate, and exactly as Zuri described. Gasps rippled again. Emily's authority crumbled in an instant. "That's enough," she barked, but the proof lay in James's trembling hands. Zuri addressed him respectfully. "Sir, could you please confirm this passport matches my name?" He nodded slowly. "It does." The crowd erupted, soft claps, a few angry voices calling for a supervisor. Emily's face turned pale. She grabbed the desk phone, calling airport security, but every second only deepened her mistake. Zuri's phone captured everything. Her calm explanation, Emily's threats, the witnesses around them. The situation had evolved from a minor incident into a public reckoning. Zuri knew what came next. She dialed her father. "Dad," she said softly, "it happened." Her father's voice sharpened through the speaker, full of calm fury. "Stay exactly where you are? I'm on my way." Then louder, "You're doing everything right, Zuri. Keep recording. The truth protects you." When she ended the call, she looked at the crowd. "No one deserves this," she said, voice trembling but strong. "We all have rights, no matter our age, color, or background." An elderly woman stepped forward, eyes wet. "You're brave, child," she whispered. "Don't let them silence you." Security officers arrived, one Latino, one black, faces cautious but curious. Emily rushed toward them, already spinning her version. "She's been harassing me." But before the officers could respond, witnesses spoke up. "No, officer," the businessman said firmly. "That woman threw a passport in the trash." Silence fell. Dozens of phones pointed toward the gate desk. The officers exchanged glances. This was no ordinary disturbance. It was evidence of discrimination unfolding live. Zuri held her camera steady, heart pounding but hands sure. She'd turned fear into focus. In the crowd, strangers began murmuring her name from the recording, Zuri James. The girl who stood tall when others might have broken. And though the storm had just begun, her calm, her knowledge, was the eye at its center. By the time the security officers reached Gate 23, the atmosphere had shifted from confusion to controlled chaos. Travelers had stopped boarding other flights just to witness what was unfolding. Phones hovered in the air like silent witnesses. Zuri stood in the middle, small, composed, her phone still recording. Emily Thompson, trembling with anger, pointed an accusing finger. "This child is disrupting airport operations," she insisted. Officer Ramirez, the younger of the two, lifted his hand gently. "Ma'am, we need calm." Then he turned to Zuri. "What happened?" Zuri didn't rush. She took a steady breath, her tone factual. "This gate agent threw my valid U.S. passport into the trash after questioning my right to travel alone. I have it on video, and multiple passengers saw it." She handed him her phone, showing the recording. The clip captured Emily's smirk as she dropped the passport. Undeniable, raw, humiliating. Officer Williams, the older officer with gray at his temples, glanced at the video. His eyes hardened. He looked from Zuri to Emily. "Is this true?" Emily's voice wavered. "It was a mistake. I thought it was fake." "A mistake doesn't come with a smile," Williams replied coldly. James Park, the second gate agent, stepped forward. "Sir, I retrieved the passport myself. It's authentic." Then, lower, almost ashamed, he added, "She's treated passengers of color differently before." A collective murmur rippled through the crowd. Witnesses began speaking up one by one. The elderly white woman, the black businessman, the Latino mother. Their words wove together a tapestry of truth. "She humiliated that girl. She questioned my kids, too. We've all seen this before." Emily's face drained of color. "You can't just gang up on me," she cried, but no one listened anymore. Authority had shifted. Justice was no longer her badge to hide behind. It was in Zuri's voice, the people's cameras, the proof in plain sight. Officer Williams asked Zuri if she wanted to file a formal report. Zuri nodded. Yes, under 14 CFR Part 16 and Title 6 of the Civil Rights Act. The officer blinked in surprise. Most adults couldn't cite those laws, let alone a child. You know your rights well, he said. My father taught me, she replied softly. The mention of her father's name spread quickly through the small crowd. Marcus James, someone whispered. The civil rights lawyer? Officer Williams recognized it instantly. Marcus had once helped his nephew win a brutality case. He stepped aside and radioed for the airport director. We've got a situation here, he said quietly, and it's big. Emily tried one last defense, her voice cracking. She's manipulating everyone. But every screen around her played the same truth. Her own actions, filmed from 10 different angles. She looked small now, cornered by her own arrogance. Within minutes, a woman in a Navy suit strode down the terminal, the airport director, Patricia Morrison. Her presence carried authority. Conversations hushed as she approached. What's going on here? She demanded. Officer Williams briefed her quickly, showing her the videos. Morrison's face darkened. She turned first to Zuri, not the employee. I'm deeply sorry for what happened, she said sincerely. Zuri thanked her, but added, an apology isn't enough. There needs to be accountability. Morrison nodded once, sharply. You'll have it. Then she faced Emily. You're suspended, effective immediately. What? You can't. Badge. Now. The metallic click of Emily's badge landing on the desk echoed like a verdict. For the first time that day, the gate fell silent, not with fear, but with justice. And as Zuri lowered her phone, she realized the story was no longer hers alone. It belonged to everyone who had ever been silenced and chose, finally, to speak. Minutes after the suspension, the gate remained frozen in silence. Emily stood pale and trembling, the crowd whispering her downfall in real time. Zuri, still clutching her phone, felt a mix of relief and disbelief. The moment wasn't over, it was only transforming. Then, through the sea of murmuring passengers, a man in a dark suit appeared, walking fast, jaw tight, eyes burning with purpose. Marcus James had arrived. His voice cut through the noise like a command. Where is my daughter? Dad, Zuri called, her calm finally cracking for the first time. Marcus reached her, pulled her into a protective embrace, his hand trembling against her shoulder. You okay, baby? I'm fine, she whispered. I stayed calm. I did everything you taught me. He looked at her, pride and fury colliding in his expression. You did more than I ever could have asked. Then, straightening his suit, he turned to face the officials. Now, someone explain why a federal document belonging to my daughter was destroyed by your employee. Director Morrison introduced herself, her tone professional but respectful. Mr. James, I want you to know we're handling this seriously. The agent has been suspended, and we have multiple witnesses. Marcus nodded, his calm sharp as glass. Handling it is not enough. I want to know what systemic failures allowed this to happen. Emily tried to interject, tears streaking down her face. I didn't mean. Marcus's voice snapped like thunder. Don't. You meant every second of it when you smiled and dropped that passport. What you didn't mean was to be caught. The crowd fell silent. Cameras kept rolling. Morrison inhaled deeply, aware of the gravity now surrounding Gate 23. Mr. James, we will cooperate fully, she promised. Your daughter showed remarkable composure. She shouldn't have had to, Marcus replied. 13-year-olds shouldn't need to memorize federal law to be treated with respect. Zuri stood beside him, her small frame steady. Dad, she said softly, I asked for accountability. You're getting it, he answered. Marcus turned toward the officers. I want an official statement documenting every witness, every video. And I want confirmation that this airport, and the airline, will be reviewing every complaint filed against this employee. Officer Williams nodded. Understood, sir. We've already begun collecting footage. Zuri then stepped forward, her voice clear and composed again. Ms. Morrison, with respect, I'd like to request that this incident not just end in punishment. I want it to lead to change. Morrison studied her. What kind of change? Zuri unzipped her backpack and pulled out a small folder. These are proposals I wrote for a school debate about discrimination in public spaces. They include training recommendations, passenger rights visibility, and independent complaint oversight. Marcus blinked, stunned. You carried those with you? Zuri smiled faintly. You told me to always be prepared. Morrison accepted the folder, flipping through the neat pages. These are solid, she murmured. Policy-level material. You're only 13. Yes, Zuri said simply. But injustice doesn't wait for adulthood. The crowd broke into quiet applause. Even Officer Ramirez smiled. Emily, standing off to the side, looked defeated, her authority stripped, her power meaningless in the face of truth and knowledge. Marcus placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder, pride softening his tone. You've just turned a personal insult into a national lesson. Zuri looked around at the witnesses still holding their phones. No one should ever fear standing up for what's right. If people record, speak, and act, change happens. The cameras kept rolling, capturing not just an incident, but the birth of something larger, a movement sparked by a girl who knew her rights and dared to use them. The chaos of Gate 23 had evolved into something profound, no longer a confrontation, but a courtroom of witnesses, phones, and truth. Zuri stood at the center, flanked by her father, while Director Morrison held the folder of reform proposals that had stunned everyone. The moment felt suspended in time, heavy with consequence. Morrison turned to the airline staff clustered nearby. Effective immediately, she said, voice hard as steel. Emily Thompson's employment is terminated pending investigation. Her actions are indefensible. The words hit like a hammer. Emily's knees buckled. She whispered, "You can't ruin me for one mistake." Marcus replied evenly, "One mistake? You humiliated a child and destroyed a federal document in public. That's not a mistake, it's a pattern." Cameras caught every word. Passengers filmed, reporters arriving from nearby terminals began snapping photos. The incident had become national news in real time. Emily was escorted away by security, her sobs fading into the hum of the terminal. When the tension finally broke, Morrison looked back to Zuri. "You've started something here," she said quietly, "and I intend to finish it right." She made a call, speaking in clipped tones. "I want a meeting with the COO and legal counsel tonight. This isn't just PR, it's policy." Marcus watched her leave, then crouched slightly to meet his daughter's eyes. "You changed the narrative," he said. "You didn't just defend yourself. You defended everyone who's ever been told to stay quiet." Zuri smiled faintly but shook her head. "It's not over yet. Real change means more than an apology or a firing. It means new rules and proof they work." Over the next hours, as flights resumed and crowds dispersed, witnesses came to thank Zuri. The black businessman clasped her hand. "My daughter's your age," he said. "Tonight, she'll know her voice matters." The elderly woman who'd filmed everything hugged her, tears in her eyes. "I marched in the 60s, she said softly. "Seeing you reminds me why we never stop fighting." Even James Park, the young gate agent, approached nervously. "Zuri," he said, "I have notes, dates, times, things I saw. I wanted to speak up before, but I was scared I'd lose my job." Zuri nodded. "You're brave for doing it now. My dad can help protect you." Marcus took James's number, promising whistleblower protection under federal law. By evening, the story had already exploded online. Someone had uploaded the full video. It had hundreds of thousands of views within hours. The hashtag Justice for Zuri trending nationwide. Civil rights groups shared it. Commentators called her the calmest activist in America. That night, as Marcus and Zuri sat together in a quiet cafe near the airport, their phones buzzed nonstop. Reporters, attorneys, activists, all reaching out. Marcus looked at his daughter and smiled wearily. "You realize what's happening?" Zuri sipped her cocoa. "Yeah, the video's viral." "No," he said softly. "A movement is viral." He explained that the airline's lawyers had already reached out, desperate to arrange an official statement. "They know they can't bury this. You've forced accountability into the light." Zuri's eyes gleamed. "Then we make sure the light stays on." The next morning, Morrison called them back to the airport boardroom. A dozen executives sat waiting, serious, cautious faces. She handed Zuri's folder across the table. "These," she said, "are now being reviewed for immediate implementation. Anti-discrimination retraining, public passenger rights displays, and a third-party complaint system. We're also instituting bias audits every quarter." Zuri's heart thumped. "You're really doing it." Morrison smiled. "Because of you, yes." Marcus leaned back, watching pride bloom in his daughter's face. "You turned pain into policy," he murmured. As they left the meeting, a young reporter stopped them for a comment. Zuri, she asked, what would you say to other kids who face discrimination? Zuri looked straight into the camera, her voice steady. Don't stay silent. Learn your rights, stay calm, and tell your truth, because silence protects the wrong people. The reporter blinked, stunned by the power of her words. The clip went viral within minutes. And just like that, the girl from Gate 23 wasn't just a passenger anymore. She was a symbol of resistance, courage, and change. Months passed, but the memory of Gate 23 refused to fade. The video had reached millions. Headlines across the nation read, 13-year-old exposes airline discrimination, inspires policy reform. Zuri James, once just a bright student heading to visit her aunt, was now the face of a national conversation about justice, equality, and youth empowerment. Airlines scrambled to review their procedures. Airports issued statements promising fairness and training. And at the center of it all was Zuri, calm, composed, and wise beyond her years. When journalists asked how she managed such courage, she answered simply, because silence never protected anyone. Her father, Marcus, watched with quiet pride. You didn't just know your rights, he told her one evening. You taught a nation theirs. Together, they appeared before committees and advocacy panels. Civil rights groups invited Zuri to speak to students, law schools, and youth organizations. She shared not just her story, but the message behind it, that knowing your rights is not arrogance, it's armor. Within a year, the airline that once humiliated her had publicly implemented every one of her proposals. Posters appeared in airports reading, respect every passenger, know your rights. Mandatory anti-discrimination training rolled out nationwide. The FAA announced oversight reforms modeled after Zuri's suggestions. What began as one act of prejudice became the spark for federal change. But for Zuri, the real reward wasn't fame, it was the letters. Thousands of them. A boy from Chicago wrote, I recorded when my teacher treated me unfairly. Now the school is investigating. A girl from Atlanta said, I used your story in my debate class. We won. Even adults sent messages thanking her for reminding them that dignity was worth defending. At 16, Zuri stood again at Reagan National Airport, this time as a guest of honor. Director Morrison greeted her warmly, smiling. You turned this place into a symbol of reform, she said. The crowd of journalists applauded as Zuri unveiled a plaque near Gate 23 reading, in memory of those who stood silent, and in honor of those who spoke. Justice begins with one voice. Reporters asked what message she wanted travelers to take from this. Zuri looked into the cameras. Power doesn't come from age, position, or uniform, she said. It comes from courage, and courage begins the moment you refuse to be silent. Later, at home, she scrolled through messages on her phone. One caught her eye. A 15-year-old girl from Texas had written, They tried to take my phone when I spoke up, but I remembered your story. I stayed calm, recorded, and now my school's changing its policy. Thank you. Zuri smiled softly, typing back. You already had that power. I just helped you see it. Now help someone else see theirs. The world now knew her as the girl from Gate 23. But to Marcus, she was still his little girl, the one who carried laminated rights cards and asked too many questions. Only now, those questions had changed the law. In her next speech at a youth summit, she stood before hundreds of students. You don't have to wait to grow up to change something, she said. You just have to decide what's worth standing for. And when you do, stand tall, even if you're standing alone. The audience rose in applause. Some cried, others recorded, but all left believing that justice could begin anywhere, even at a boarding gate. From that day forward, Gate 23 became more than a number. It became a symbol, a reminder that respect is not granted by power, but demanded by truth. Because one girl, with a phone, a calm voice, and the courage to say enough, proved that even the smallest act of resistance can echo across a nation.